Hello there, and welcome to the Skills Team's live stream, the introduction to the key skills at university. So I am Alexander Wood, I am a skills co-creator at the university, and as well as waiting for a few people to come into the stream, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself. So I recently graduated from the university, and I now work here in the skills team. So I make a lot of content, including the content that you're watching right now. And part of that content is the skills guides. So, what are these skills guides? Well, this is where the introduction to the key skills comes in. So, the skills guides are a set of resources that can help you with your academic writing, your critical thinking, evaluating sources, and so on. They can basically help you with all your academic assessments. They are broad, so they target any assessment, not just one type of assessment, and they also cover lots of different degrees. So me and the team here at the university, and also some other teams such as the academic librarian team and the research librarians, we make these together, and we try to make them with students, academics, and our own expertise, and the expertise of resources like books. So let me show you one of these skills guides. So let me take you through the academic writing skills guide, for example, and to introduce you to some of the key skills. So here is a typical skills guide. So first of all, this academic writing skills guide, it has some guidance about writing for university, what's expected and things like that. On the right it has a video with the lovely Timotheus talking about how you could structure an assignment process in his Derby Diamond. And you also have some resources on the right and also some other useful guides. On the left you've got a calendar which includes workshops and drop-ins, so that talks about when we have certain events or certain online events. On the top there's loads of tabs that you can click on, and these tabs will be the subject of this stream or this video today. So I'm going to be going through all of these, or not all of them, but some of the key ones for studying and answering any questions you have. So at any point, if you've got any questions, feel free to send them through to me in the chat and I'll get back to you and I'll frame this all around you. So this stream is all about you asking me the questions and also me talking about some of the key skills. So before I do that, and whilst you're thinking of some questions to ask me, I am going to go and show you where the skills guides are. So the skills guides can be found, first of all, through the University of Derby homepage. So to get to this page, if you don't know already, search University of Derby into Google or whatever search user or search browser that you have. So from there, scroll all the way down to the bottom and click on the library button. Alternatively, you can find this through the library tile on Udo and go to the library homepage, but this takes you to the main University of Derby library homepage. So from here, if you scroll down, there's something here called Find Subject Information. So that is where it is, this little tab here. So if you click on this, it takes you to the various information that we have, and there are some guides here for each different subject, so check out the guidance for your own subject. That is written by the academic librarians and also for your course. But we have the skills guides here, so this is what the skills team, librarians and researchers work on. So when at the start of the live stream I was on this homepage here, which just had just the guides on. You can also see how many views they have if you're interested. But the key ones that I've viewed are reflective writing and academic writing, so both of those topics will be covered in this live stream. But if you have got any questions, feel free to send them my way and I'll answer them. So what I'm planning on doing here is I'm planning on going through the academic writing structure from start to finish a little bit and answering any questions I have along the way and covering any more topics. So if you have got any questions, feel free to answer or ask me them. And please do, if you think that's a good idea, please write so in the comments. So, I'm going to show you first of all the academic writing guide that I was just on. So, this guide starts you off when you've just got your assignment. So you've just been given your assignment, what do you go from there? What do you do? Well, the first thing we'd recommend is trying to understand the question and understand the individual assignment. So, first of all, find out as much as you can do about that assessment. So you've got it, ask every question. How long is it? How long have you got to do? Write that in your calendar. What specific things are there within this assignment? Are there any criteria that you need to achieve for it? What are the learning outcomes? What does they want you to demonstrate? So I'd find all those things out and try to understand what's needed. Then I'd look at the specific question. So what's the question say? So understanding the question is quite simple. So understanding the question comes in, and basically you have to ask what the key words are within that question. So what are the things that it's asking you to do? So Alana has just asked, do you have any skills guides on proofreading? Yes, we do, and I'll talk to you about that slightly later on, as we have it there, and I'll talk to you about that after we've covered the rest of the assignment journey. So is that okay? So whilst I wait for the reply, because there is a little bit of a delay on this live stream, I'll continue talking about understanding the question. So we have a little resource here, a video, and if you listen to that video, it's not from us, it's from the University of Sydney. That goes through the type of things you've got to do, so asking those questions about your question that you've got. So any word in there, define it, ask and try to think, what points might I want to include in this essay? Or what do I need to include to answer that question? Because that's what an essay is, basically, is it's you answering your question. So you've got to make sure that you know how to answer that individual question. So this guide basically takes you through some questions that you could ask. And down here we've got a document called Instruction Words in Assignment Questions. So if I open that up, it takes us to the University of Leicester's page and talks about some of the key buzzwords that might be there, like critically analyse and things like that, or critically evaluate. So by looking at what these definitions are, you can then have a better idea of what's expected from you. And later on in this guide, I will be talking about what critical means and how you could demonstrate that you've done it. So, when you understand the question, good, I'm glad that you're happy with the response, Alana. So, once you understand the question, the next part is to try and figure out a structure. So, some students will do a little bit of research here. They'll do a little bit of research to try and define what the structure is. So part of what I'm doing at the moment is I'm making a podcast called The Assignment Journey. For that, I went to interview lots of students, and a lot of them resoundingly said that they go out and they do a bit of research to inform that structure and from their understanding of the question. So you do a little bit of research and you try and work out the base structure of your essay. So that includes, first of all, the overall essay structure, and then individually paragraph structure. So I try and plan this out before I complete my research so that I can inform what my research is, and I know that is targeted, and so my research is more targeted. So I start off with some general research first, and then I get into the targeted stuff. So with my structure, first of all, the entire essay structure, so the full thing. So first of all, I do an introduction. Well, actually, that's ironically a thing I actually probably write last. I'll explain why in a second. So the first thing in an essay is an introduction, roughly about 10% of the words. You basically sum up everything you've written in the exam, well, not in the exam. You basically sum up everything that you've written in the assignment into the introduction in a very short paragraph. Like, that is about 10% of the words. The way I've learned it is, or the way I was told it by one of my lecturers when I was a student here, was tell me what you're going to tell me. So basically say what you're going to say in the essay. The introduction could be a place where potentially you could talk about some of the context, but say basically what you're going to find in this essay. So then the next bit is the main body. So typically I write the main body first, and then I write the conclusion, and then I say what I'm going to say in the introduction last. Because it's really hard to write the introduction, especially as the first thing. I often sit there and think, well, what can I say? So that's why I write it last. And often if I do write it first, I have then gone and completely changed it. So yes, with a structure, first of all you introduce the thing with the introduction, then the main body. So now you tell me it. You tell me what you're going to say in the essay. This should be about 80% of the word count, and should include lots of paragraphs and lots of points where you demonstrate skills and you also answer the question. So included in that will be a paragraph structure. So we've got this document here called Point, Evidence, Explain, and it's an example of that. And we've also added onto that criticize link. And I'll talk to you about that once I've spoken about my conclusion. So finally, once you've said everything, you then do the conclusion, which is right at the bottom. And in this conclusion, you don't add anything new in, you write about 10% of the words, and you sum up everything that you've done. My introduction and my conclusion are often very similar. The only difference is the conclusion is driven by what I found and talks about nothing new, whereas the introduction is more, this is what you're going to read, whereas the conclusion is more, this is what you just read. So my conclusion is, probably one of the last things the second to last thing that I write. So I said about point, evidence, explain. So we've got a document here which can help with this. So if I click on this, it will take me to this document. As you can see, I have already downloaded it. You can't because my body is in the way in the stream. So what we've got is point, evidence, explain, criticize, link. This is a paragraph structure. So inside your essay, you might have lots of paragraphs. So in a mock essay that I often use when I talk to students about this, I often use the essay question of, what is the weather outside? You will never get asked that at university as an essay question, but it's a good example that everyone can sort of add to. So my overall question is, what is the weather outside? The first paragraph of that could be, the weather outside is wet. The second paragraph could be about how the weather outside is windy. And the third paragraph could be about how the weather outside is also foggy. So those are three separate points that I'm making. So they follow three separate paragraphs where I justify and find those three things. So each one of them I need to demonstrate them and evidence them. And so to do that, I'm going to use this structure, but first of all, I'm going to do it just for the weather outside is cold paragraph. So, my point. So the first thing you should do in the structure is you should make a statement. So that's my point. My point is basically what the mini paragraph is going to find. So actually it's like the introduction again. I'm introducing that paragraph and I'm saying what I'm going to find in it. So, I will say in here, the weather outside is cold. That is my point. I then can add some additional information to that point. I like to keep things concise, don't like to waste words, that's why it's so short, also because it's very basic. So what's the evidence for that? Well, I'm going to use the Met Office, a reputable source about the weather. The Met Office have said that the weather outside is 4 degrees, and then I reference that saying Met Office, 2019, if I was using Harvard, that's a citing, and then obviously I'd put a proper reference at the end of my essay. So that's my evidence. The Met Office have backed me of evidence that point by saying it's 4 degrees. However, I then need to explain that. So when you explain, you need to show how the evidence actually supports your point. So how does it? How does it support my point? Well, actually, it's 4 degrees outside, but who knows what 4 degrees means? So to explain it, I can then back it up with another piece of authority potentially. So I can explain it by saying, the weather outside is therefore cold at 4 degrees because 4 degrees is cold. That is a long way of saying it. 4 degrees is cold because the average temperature in the UK is 13.5 degrees. I've just made that up. But I can find that from, let's say, the BBC, when they've written a report saying this is what the average weather is, or ITV News, or something like that, some reputable source on the issue. So the weather outside is 13.5 degrees on average. Today's weather is 4 degrees. So therefore, that evidence the fact that today it isn't like 9 degrees or 9.5 degrees below the average. Therefore, today is cold by comparison. So therefore, that's backed up what I've said. So I've explained it. So initially you think, well, 4 degrees, of course it's cold. But I'm being obvious. I'm being explicit in my arguments. I am explicitly saying this is why it is cold and this is what it means. Because that's what a lot of students that I've noticed have let themselves down on. they haven't been explicit in the evidence, explaining how the evidence actually helps their point and actually answers the question. So I've seen it a lot with theories. When I've looked at students, they've got this really, really good theory backing up their work, but they haven't said how it applies or how it actually answers the question. And to them, when I ask them, how does it answer this question? They say, well, of course it does, because of this. And my response to them is always, so why haven't you said that in your essay? And they always go, oh yeah. But at first it doesn't feel like it's an obvious thing. But if you think about being obvious and think about explaining how these things link, that's how you get the marks. But then this is just point, evidence, explain. You'll notice I have actually added in, well, not I, but the team, because this predates me, I've added in criticise and link. So criticise. This goes back to critical analysis later, and something I was going to show you on the critical analysis skills guide. But we're criticising, it means not just being positive, criticise means not just being negative, but also includes being positive. So asking questions, thinking about it, looking at the advantages and the weaknesses, supporting it. So one thing I can do is I can compare the weather here, for example. I could compare the weather here to another similar country and say, well, look, the weather in the UK is very cold, because in Spain it's 21 degrees. So that's a lot hotter. And today here it's 4. Therefore, it is cold. I could say, well, I can be critical of the Met Office. I could say, well, although yes, they've said it's 4 degrees, often they've been 2 degrees off in an area, so that would mean that it might be 6 degrees. That would be me finding a weakness. However, I would overall then conclude that it's still 6 degrees and the average temperature is 13.5, therefore it's still cold, even with the inaccuracy. But you could question the accuracy of it, especially if it makes a difference to the answer. So this is where I can find a way of being critical, and often using another source to either back it up or to criticise it. But the key here is you've criticised it, or you supported it, or you've found flaws in it. Explain what that means. And finally, the next part is link. So one of the key things that students haven't done when I've looked at their essays or when I've seen people's work is stated how all their findings in that paragraph answer the question. Why is this point relevant? You said the weather is cold, but then you said about the temperature. Well, how does the temperature being this answer the question? So just simply linking this back to the big overall question. So you've answered, yes, the weather's cold. Why, if it's cold, does it mean that's what the weather is? It's very basic. But all you have to do is say, the weather is there, therefore the weather is cold. This means that overall the weather is cold. That's a difficult way of doing it, but you can do it by basically using the key words in the overall question in your conclusion of the paragraph and just concluding basically with something very similar to your introduction, but applied to the question and using the key words of the question. So, is that okay for everyone? Does anyone want me to go any more in detail with this, or shall I move on? I'll keep it open just in case. Ooh, this is my podcast. So that's the plan for the podcast, which I'm currently writing. So then we've got some guides for essays, literature reviews and reports. Because of time in this stream, I won't be covering those 3 things. But what I will be covering is proofreading. So before I do that, I'm just going to go back to the LibGuides, and I'm going to talk a bit about critical analysis again. But before I do that, when you are writing your structure and when you are writing your essay, you do need to do some research, and you will need to do use search strategies and techniques and organise your research well. What I will say about those subjects is if you want any further information, there is information in the guides, and also the library offers lots of workshops that can be found on the eWow calendar to help you with those. So I'll show you how to book one of those workshops. There is currently one going on right now about Introduction to Digital Library, but they are regular, and some of them are run by the skills team, some are run by the academic librarian, so I'll show you how to book onto one of those now. So go to the library homepage, which I showed you how to get to earlier. You scroll down. So if you are new to the stream, you go to the library homepage from the University of Derby homepage or through Udo. You scroll down, you go past the find such information thing that we went on earlier, and you go to make a booking. Here's where you can book an appointment or a workshop or a study room. If you click book a workshop, it shows you some workshops there. So there are lots of regular workshops that are available to you, and I'd recommend going to one of those to learn more about research. There is also one coming up next Tuesday, for example, or one coming up regularly if you're watching this back at a later date, about referencing, and so we'll talk more about referencing in that one, although if anyone does ask, I can briefly explain it in this recording. So one of the things that I haven't mentioned is that before you write your actual essay, it's about organising your research and references, and that's something, again, this podcast that I'm doing will cover, but it's about, well, how can you organise it? So if anyone has any questions about that, feel free to ask, but the way that I organise my research is that as soon as I read anything, I store all the referencing information of that book or that e-journal somewhere, and I make a big document with all my research in before I start writing. And one of the key things and one of the key skills or pieces of advice that I could give to you right now is don't write until you've done your research. What some students do is that they write and then they research as they write, but so therefore their writing informs their research, but often then they finish researching as soon as they've got to the required word limit. That's not the best way of doing it, to quote Tim in one of our guides, our introduction to the Derby Diamond video. The best way of doing it is to research first, organise it all into a nice document or a nice place where you can find it, whatever works for you, and to let your research inform what you write. So that means being willing to keep updating your structure, add new things in, and sometimes it does mean that you'll be over the word limit. But that's when proofreading comes in. And so when you're proofreading, that's when you can start checking things over and start checking through things and making sure that you can fit everything in. So now with me, my essays are often a lot bigger than the word count is, because I've researched and I've written all my research up into a document, and then I've gone, oh, so this 3,000 word essay, here's 4,500 words. Now how do I get that in? But by doing that, it means both that you avoid waffle, and it also means that you get to cherry pick the best points rather than having an essay filled with waffle and wasted words, and also having essays using the first points that you thought of. Obviously, researching whilst you write is quicker, but I've only ever done this on one assignment at my time at university, and that I got my lowest mark on. I got 55 on that piece of work. That was my lowest mark that I ever got, and it was because I did it in a rush and I didn't get the right grade. So a lot of that comes down to time management. So again, if anyone is interested, I can talk about time management if anyone wants. So that being said, I've spoken a little bit about critical analysis already. I've spoken about organising research and references a little bit. There is reference management software available, such as EndNote. There will be a recording on our YouTube channel at some point about that, and there is also classes that you can go to, or library workshops that you can go to for that. I think there's one that I just saw called Introduction to EndNote. So go to that if you can. There will be a recording of that on our YouTube at some point in the future. So, now that I have explained those things, let's go back to the skills guides. So earlier on, I was asked, is there any guidance for proofreading? Yes, there is. So this is a guide that I wrote myself fairly recently. Proofreading, in my eyes, is many things. Lots of people view proofreading as this tool that is just for a really quick thing used for checking your spelling, your punctuation, and your grammar. I would say it's that, but it's also a lot more. So for me, proofreading takes longer than my writing of the essay. and research takes the longest. Writing the essay probably takes me the least time out of anything, but it's proofreading, it's the editing of the essay that I do afterwards that takes the longest, and that is how I get the grades. And that may seem weird, and it may seem like a waste of time, but I'll explain why it's not now. So when I proofread, rather than checking the spelling, the punctuation, the grammar, I do check those. I also check a lot of other things. The key thing that I check is that I have hit the marking criteria. So on the right hand side there are the grade descriptors. If you have a look at those, you can see some marking criteria that are generic. If you've got an assignment brief, check that. Check what they want, check what the learning outcomes are, check what you're meant to have achieved in this essay, and see if you've done that. If you have done that, great. But I make sure that I've evidenced those things a lot. That's one of the key things that I do. But I do more than that again. I check that each sentence flows, and that they feel like everything's in the right order and it all goes naturally together. So for example, in this recording, I didn't start on proofreading and then go to understand the question. I tried to have an natural flow. At times that can get broken up by questions, but I try to flow naturally through the process of an essay, rather than starting at the end, going to the middle, start, middle again, end with the start of the essay. So I try to make everything flow and make everything feel like it's in the right order. One of the crucial things that I've already sort of mentioned is making sure that you've linked your points back to the question every time you've made one. So read each point critically and think, in this point, have I actually answered the question? Because that's what the overall thing with an essay is. Have you answered that essay question? So check again, and make sure that you have done. Again, something else I've already said. Make sure that the sources that you have used are relevant. If you're unsure if they're relevant, then do the answer to the question. If you haven't stated why they're relevant, well, do it. If they aren't relevant, get rid of them. They're a waste of words. If they don't answer the question, either make them or bin them, because they're a waste. And the word count of essays is surprisingly small, and so you should try and get as much in the word count as you can do. Ooh, Alana has asked me, do you think that reading aloud would help? Yes. So one thing that is useful is that you can read aloud when you do your proofreading. So there's a number of ways that you can do this. So first of all, reading it aloud yourself is the most simple way, but probably the worst way. The second way, grab a friend, or your mate, get over here, can you just read my work? Just read it out loud. And what that means is they will notice errors if they read it aloud, or if they just read it in general. They will notice errors, because when you're reading something, you'll often notice things, especially with your own work, you might not notice errors. So when you do proofread, one thing I would recommend is having fresh eyes. So proofread it a few days after you've written it, so that you aren't remembering what you've written, so that you are almost new to it and you've forgotten what you've written. Because I've ever written a assessment and then thought it's perfect, gone back to it when you've got your feedback and gone, oh my god, how did I make all them errors? Well, your lecturer spotted them because they had fresh eyes, and if you gave yourself a few days, you would have fresh eyes too. I am guilty of this. I have gone back through what I thought was perfect work, in terms of grammar at least, and checked it, and I thought it was fine, and there was errors in there. And sometimes that's been the only thing that they've marked down, and their excuse to mark me below what I could have got. So I've always make sure you read them a few times and read them with fresh eyes. But we're talking about reading aloud. So reading aloud. So as well as you reading it aloud, you can also get computers to read it aloud. So let's go to Word Online. So I'm just going to casually go into the staff intranet for a few seconds. Office 365. Actually, I'm going to do it a different way. So I'm going to go to Udo. So on Udo, all University of Derby students are given free access to Microsoft Office 365, and included in that is Word Online. There are many benefits to using Word Online, such as the fact that it automatically saves your work, which I think is amazing, because I've lost essays before, and I don't think I've ever felt any more pain than losing hours of work. But also they have other features. So if you go to Udo, one of the tabs where I can find it is Office 365. There we go, right at the bottom, hidden on its own little row. So special, it has its own little row. If you click on that, it says go to Office 365 as the top tab. Takes you here. So you can see here, here's some things that I have open. So from here, if I then go to Word, and let's say I go to interviewing skills, what's this? So currently one thing I'm doing is I am interviewing people for podcasts, so I have made a unproofread document about interviewing skills. So one way I could find out about if that's wrong is on Word Online, there's this amazing feature called Immersive Reader. So if you go to View and then click Immersive Reader, and let me just turn my sound on so that you guys can hear my output. So this is the Immersive Reader. I've customized this myself, so basically you can do lots of things with it. We have a video on what you can do with it on our YouTube channel, but you can play it back to you, so you should be able to see some of the key areas that I've got here, because I haven't proofread this. So if you click play.
Useful. To become a good interviewer, there is no substitute for practice and experience. Be a good listener. Listen to lots of different kinds of podcasts on a range.
But yeah, so you'll see it'll become clear when there are mistakes. You should be able to find them pretty easily when you listen to it, because all of a sudden she said something like form instead of from. So if you write, this research is from this person, when the AI then says, this research is from this person, you're like, wait, what? Why are you saying from? And that clues you onto it. And so I think that's really important. And a really good tool that you can use. Also, it's good for reading and also reading tools, so you can put other work in that reader. So this is, just click View, Immersive Reader, and it takes you there on Word Online. But yeah, the university has lots of online tools on Office, all for free, as part of being a University of Derby student. So all of these tasks I use on a daily basis. Teams is like a free version, is like a work Facebook, which is amazing. And these are all things that you can use to help enhance your learning and enhance your study. So back to the skills, guys, and proofreading. So reading aloud, as I've said, very useful. I can now see the chat again, so if anyone has any more questions, please ask. So all the things you should do when you proofread, and this is something that actually I have found that I have been slightly guilty of myself. Make sure you double check what the word count is. So some assignments at the University of Derby have a 10% bonus that you can use. If you've got that bonus, use it. It's free. It's free. You can just get more points in your work, or more critical analysis, and and show off some more wider reading or some more journals. If you can use it, use it. So the only issue with using it is once you go over it, you can be penalised. So make sure you are under it. But double check that you are actually knowing what the word limit is. So ironically, the same assignment that I talked about earlier that I got my worst grade on, because I didn't do it in enough time, it was 1,500 words plus 10%. I just finished a 2,500 word essay, and so I wrote 1,750 words. If anyone's good at maths, you'll be clearing up to what's happened here. 10% added to 1,500 is 150. I wrote 1,750. The actual word limit is 1,650. And about an hour and a half before the deadline, someone mercifully told me on a Facebook chat that I had what the word limit was. Well, it wasn't even telling me, someone else. And I was like, oh. And just quickly got rid of it. Got rid of 100 words. But I would have been capped or had my marks reduced potentially for being over the word limit when I didn't need to. So make sure you double check it. Use a calculator, don't do it in your head, don't be stupid. But it can happen to anyone. It nearly happened to me. So how long are we into this live stream? So we're currently 35 minutes in. So has anyone got any more questions that they'd like to ask whilst I finish talking about proofreading? So one thing I do in proofreading is I turn my mark scheme into a checklist. So I'll go and I'll have like a checklist like this. What's this? And I just go down it and tick off. I make it custom for each different thing. I look at what I need to do and I go and say, have I done it? Where have I done it? And often I highlight my work to evidence that I've done it. And it looks a bit odd, but it's good and it helps me realise that I've done it. And I'm often quite nervous when I submit my assignment, so it gives me some confidence that I think at least that I've done every single thing that they've wanted to do, and I can evidence it multiple times. I can evidence my critical analysis, I can evidence my wide of reading, I can evidence where I've used journals and so on. And it gives me some confidence in it, or more confidence than I would have. And it means that, in my opinion, I'm like, well, it gives me extra hope that I will get what I want to get. And so it gives me more confidence. So let's just go back to the LibGuides. So I've got 35 more minutes. So other things that, or other key skills of studying at university. So another key skill of studying at university is presentations and group work. So I'll talk about presentations actually. So presentations, we've got a podcast down here which features a former University of Derby student who's now a graduate, talking about their experience doing presentations in class. But we have some guidance here about how to deliver presentations, some videos about body language, and how you deal with questions. So really, presentations in my eyes, it's all about the practice. And you should treat the research similarly to how you treat the research in general assessments, in general assignments, sorry. So what I'd recommend is practicing as much as you can and trying to pre-think about what things they could ask you, and being well versed in it but not being too well versed. For more information, go on some of these videos that we've made. So that in this video here, for example, me and one of my colleagues are discussing what our top advice would be, and here one of my colleagues is talking about her advice for body language. So, other key skills. So I said it earlier, one of the other key skills I'll be covering in the stream would be time management, because that is, in my view, the crucial thing for university study. Both in the sense that your degree should be one thing that you could be doing, but once you get good time management skills, you can start doing lots of other things like volunteering, getting a job. And so if you can try and plan things into your calendar with that and manage your degree time so that you have got that spare time and make yourself more employable, that would be really important. So for more information about that, go speak to the Careers Employment Service. They're amazing and they can help you out with all that stuff. But I know for me, when I was a student, I had to time manage, and the more time managed, the better I started doing, and the more I started realising what I was capable of doing, and the earlier I realised that I should probably have started doing my work. So I said in my first year I had a situation where I did an assignment and I was running out of time. That happened because of poor time management. So how do I time manage? I make a calendar, I plan things out, I try and think, okay, this is a project, how long do I think will be needed? And then I add some more time onto that as well. I then plan in and structure of, okay, how can I do those things? When can I do them? How can I fit that in? If I then think, well, I can't, what can I change so that I can? And what things should I be doing to change it? Other important things about time management is making sure that you don't burn out and giving yourself social time where you can socialise and become happy and enjoy life. That is really crucial. And if you time manage well, you will never have to pull an all-nighter. I think as a student I pulled 2 in my first years, but I never had to pull them. But I never had to pull them really because of the fact that I'd planned and organised and I'd done lots of research, and I was trying to be as responsible as I could be. So there's some guidance about time management here. There's also a video of your current vice president activities, Faye Davis, who's talking about how she managed everything, because when she was a student, she was doing things very often. She was always busy. She was doing sports, societies, and everything like that. And so she talks there about how she fits things in. We also have a video down here about the importance of socialising and having fun when you're a student. So does anyone else have any questions that they'd like to ask me before I start to wrap everything up? Okay then. So whilst I'm waiting, just in case anyone is going to ask a question, because I know and do appreciate that there is a delay, let's just show you guys what was I going to show you? Let me just show you the accessibility guidance tools that we have. So if you go into the digital library tab, it has this accessibility support from the library. It's a really good tab that also can help you out, especially if you've got any additional needs, or even if you don't. These guides include information that can really help you, and so these guides can help you and help you understand various things, and they can highlight some of the amazing tools that are available to students that can help them out and can give them additional support. So in my opinion, they are useful regardless if you have any additional needs or not. But they are available to all students, so have a look, check all this stuff out, and see if anything is helpful to you. So currently, I've not got any more questions coming in, so I think I'm going to wrap everything up there, unless anyone has any questions they want to ask me in the next 3 minutes. Oh, here we go. I've been asked, do you have any tips for managing a job and doing work at the same time? Yes. So currently I'm actually a student here, so I'm studying on Saturdays as well as working here full time during the week, and so that's what I'm currently doing. Yes. So I'm studying during the weekends, but to do that, I have to plan time when I can do my work. So in the evenings, I plan slots where I do my work, I look at what's needed, and I try and plan it out. The key thing is to time manage with that is making sure you actually do the work. It's very difficult and very draining to do the work in the evenings, but if you make it small and regular, it fits in far better. So if you can start off as early as possible, it's currently the first week of February, so actually you've got a chance now to try your best to get ahead and start revising as early as possible if you've got exams. And if you've got assignments, start working on them as early as possible, because the small amount you do now means that you're not just going from nothing to everything really quickly, and it can mean that when it comes to everything, you're far better at practice, you're far more ready, and you'll be more ready than you think you are. That's what I've always done, and that's what I think. So I have been asked if I have any more questions, where can I go for help? So first of all, you can go to the skills guides. Those guides hopefully will help you with any questions that you have. Second of all, we have currently got some online drop-ins available, and we have some in-person drop-ins, but there is subject and potential change with those things. Those are what we have this semester in 2020, the first semester of the year, but those might change. But what does happen is you can check by going onto the Booker Library Workshop thing from the homepage of the library. So you scroll down, Booker Workshop, you can see some of the availability. So for example, there is drop-ins there are online workshops, and there are also online drop-ins too. If you would like an appointment about research or about subject-specific software, you can book appointments with the academic librarians, and you can do that via the make a booking and then booking appointments. So you select your location. Sometimes if you do click online, even if you aren't an online student, there might be support there. Let's just go to Kiddleston Road. And then you can click on various things and you can see who's available and when they are available. So, does anyone else have any other questions that they'd like to ask before I wrap everything up? And I do appreciate, again, there could be some time delay in between those things. Also, if you do have any burning questions, another thing that you can do is you can email the library. So if you go to the Contact Us section, which I've just missed. Whoops. If you go to the Contact Us section, which is here, it gives you the library email. So the library email, if I zoom in on that, is library@derby.ac.uk. So that's the library email. If you have got questions, you can ask them, and they'll try to support you as much as they can do. And often that involves them signposting you onto other services, or the relevant services. So yes, thank you very much. So I'll wait a few more seconds, see if anyone has any other questions, and then I'll start to wrap everything up. Okay then. So yes, thank you very much for watching this live stream. I really do appreciate everyone who's watched here, all the comments, all the support, and for you all taking your time to watch this stream. If you have got any questions, like I say, email library@derby.ac.uk, or go to one of the other workshops that we have available, or watch some of our YouTube videos. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a nice day, and I hope you enjoy our other content as well. Let's just end the stream. Bye.